Setting up your meeting for Facebook Live.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, we should be on now. I'm just going in to share this on my own Facebook page.
Right.
There we go. All right, there we go. Now it's working. Boom. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to another Money Monday. I'm Henry. I'm your friend in finance. We have Chris Tanner here with us again. Hi, Chris.
Hi everyone. Hi Henry.
Thanks everyone for joining us again. Today we're going to be talking about something that I've noticed this actually, and I think I mentioned this to you, Chris. I don't know if I actually told you, but I've noticed this a lot. People compare themselves to others all the time. It's kind of what we do. And recently I've heard a lot of people comparing themselves to others, specifically when it comes to finance and investing, which can be kind of dangerous, which we're going to go into a little bit later. First, I wanted to just kind of take a step back, and I have a guitar here, and I wanted to kind of talk about why is comparison with other people so dangerous, so bad. You probably know the phrase "comparison is the thief of happiness." And we're going to use practicing guitar as an example of why that can be bad and a better way to actually do it. So if you're just starting out playing an instrument, playing guitar, playing violin, viola, Molly plays viola, whatever you start out playing, whatever you start out doing, if you start out comparing yourself to other people, what's going to end up happening is that you're going to feel bad because you're just not as good as them. You know, everybody starts out playing the guitar. It sounds kind of, that's actually a chord. So I've tried to be worse than that. I tried to be worse, but it didn't work. Yeah, you know, like you get like a weird sound like that, and it just doesn't quite work out. Just none of the notes are automatically in a chord, so you have to practice. I have a lot of really talented friends, and growing up, both my sibling and my dad are both really good at guitar, even though they'll be shy and they'll tell you they're not. So it was really hard for me when, you know, I'm there trying to learn that's a chord, that's G, and then I would go downstairs and my dad would be doing, let's see if I can do it. Yeah, there it is.
That's so pretty, Henry.
Thanks. My dad wrote that, so it's really hard to start practicing. You know, when you see others being really talented, it's really hard to stick to it because you feel like you're not making progress, right? And so that you know, inevitably that leads to frustration. You're not doing as well as you expect, and because of that, you end up giving it up. I was a little bit more tenacious, and I took some classes in college. But even then, you know, I would show up to class, and my guitar teacher would just go frum frum and play flamenco, and I would go, I'm not gonna do that. So, what would have been a better way for me to learn guitar? Would be by measuring my own progress. You know, you start out, you go, okay, I learn one chord. And then the next day you go, okay, here is another one. If you're paying attention to your own progress, if I paid attention to my own progress, I would go, I made 100% improvement in one day because I learned another chord. On top of that, then you've learned a couple more because it starts getting easier the more you do it. Now I have 4 chords, and then suddenly you can do. By doing it step by step, by measuring my own progress to what I was doing before. And when I was actually finally able to learn how to play guitar a little bit better, I ended up doing it by setting a goal of learning specific songs. So that was like those are the chords of If I Had a Hammer. Leonard Cohen has some really good songs. You know, that's ultimately when the people who, if you know anybody who plays an instrument, especially guitar, that's ultimately how a lot of people end up learning, by setting their own goals, measuring their own pace, and that way they can feel really good the entire way. So now I can actually do what my dad used to do. because I set my own pace to learn how to do that. So what does that have to do with finance? Did I actually just had started Money Monday just to actually play the guitar mediocrely? No, because this is actually something that, like I said, we've noticed before in a lot of people when it comes to finance, comparing how your money is growing to somebody else. Most recently, I've actually seen it. I don't know if you've seen this, Chris, when it comes to the stimulus checks. Stimulus checks can be very useful for a lot of people in a lot of different ways, but people have when the last round of stimulus checks came out, people started comparing how they had to use it with how somebody else had to use it, and that led to a lot of frustration, as opposed to being able to actually get the joy out of actually being able to make use of that money in your own particular way. So I have a series because Chris has been in the industry longer than I have, and he's an expert. So I have a couple broad questions for him so we can kind of get started and really hash out what this comparison can do to people when it comes to finances. So I just mentioned a couple ways that comparison can kind of crop up when it comes to finances. Chris, what other ways does comparison, what other things does comparison do to people when they start comparing their finances to others?
Yeah. Well, you gave an example of the stimulus checks being one of the ways that people compare. Another one is just looking at performance of investments. Like, oh yeah, my brokerage account grew 50% yesterday or something. In the past couple months, we had a few stocks out there that had, some crazy rides, and we covered that a bit. That's another place where comparison is very likely. And I mean, ultimately it can lead to dissatisfaction. It can lead to totally upending your strategy if you have a long-term goal and a long-term strategy, and you're like, oh, this person just had a short-term, bump up. I need to change to that. It leads to shooting where the rabbit was. If you're chasing performance, you're likely to actually buy high and then sell low, lose out on your after the fact on the gains. So yeah, there's just a few examples.
Yeah, and and I think that one of the things that kind of came to mind when you were saying that the shooting where it was is it's like in football when you're the quarterback and you got to throw a pass to somebody, you don't throw the pass to where you don't throw the pass to where they are, because they're not going to be there when it's in 0.3 seconds or whatever once time moves on. And that's what people end up doing when it comes to stocks as well, is they're going where it's at right now, but by the time you're actually able to execute and things like that, stocks have already moved on and you're not going to get the same kind of gains.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest harms of comparison is exactly that, like upsetting or changing from a long-term strategy that is in place for a reason and is working, just to chase short-term gains because you saw, GameStop skyrocket or a few other things like that, because that can have grave consequences for sure.
Yeah, I actually I don't remember what book it was, but it was talking about how the bubbles happen when long-term investors try to trade like short-term investors. And it's specifically set in a way like that. So what you're saying right now is definitely ringing true. So we just talked about how when you're practicing guitar, you want to be able to benchmark. So different ways, measure your progress. Basically, you want some way to measure your progress so you're doing well. What kind of ways? What are some good ways to measure your progress when it comes to finances, so you can focus on yourself instead of other people?
Yeah. So one of the obvious ways is to measure returns, and that's something that I think it's the easiest to look at. It brings our attention, and that's one way to view growth. However, it's always important to note what is the risk that's being taken whenever you look at returns are never a fact in isolation. And so we actually think there's better metrics than just seeing, okay, what was the return on my portfolio this quarter, on my investments these past few months. And one of those reasons is because, you don't know what else, what are the risks necessarily at play. And another reason is in the short term, investments are inherently volatile. That's why you're rewarded with a return, is because there's risk.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say too is that return is something that a lot of people look at, but it's not necessarily actually a great way to know if you're doing a good job, because just looking at that one number doesn't take into account a whole lot of other factors that are playing into it. It reminds me of I don't know if you read, I wrote on the blog, which by the way, go sign up for our blog. I write articles on there and they're pretty helpful. I wrote on the blog comparing our factor-based investing method with sabermetrics, how if you saw the movie Moneyball, Billy Beane took the Oakland A's and basically said, we're focusing on all these different statistics, but instead we can just focus on these few. And the number one important statistic is how many runs is this worth? And so we're kind of seeing with people looking only at returns is that, Billy Beane discovered stolen bases were really not worth it because you're risking so much. Your person could get out and that's a potential run that you've completely lost there. And so something similar happens when we're only looking at returns, where we're ignoring these some potentially dangerous, risky statistics, the volatility, like you said, which means that it might not be the best measure for everybody.
Yeah. So a better way, again, I started with returns because I think that's the starting point. That's what people think of when they're thinking, how do I measure my progress? But a better starting point, like Henry said, for comparing against yourself and your situation is net worth, because that's the whole picture. That's all of your assets, not just risky investments, and that's something that with discipline can grow consistently, and even at an increasing rate throughout your life.
So just for everybody else, what is net worth? How would you define net worth?
Great question. So net worth is, in short, what you own minus what you owe. So assets minus debt. So all of your things of value, then you subtract out all the debt or what you owe from that. And so net worth can be negative. A lot of folks, especially early on in their life, maybe right after college, have a lot of student debt. Maybe they just bought a house. You can have more debt than assets, and that's okay. That's a starting point for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think I got the graph from either you or Bob somewhere there, or maybe it was Dimensional, which is a company we use for mutual funds. But it showed the life cycle of people, and it showed that over here you had negative net worth, but then it had this really cool arc that it was almost like a sideways S. Almost. So it was just, and I was like, oh, that's great. There's an actual trajectory, because people don't go, it's not a linear thing. So you're not going to just whoop in a straight line, because that's not life. Life doesn't move in straight lines. Life moves in curves and waves. And so it was really cool to see that. It was just and at the end, and I think that for me, that was the most hopeful, was that even if at some point down here, it feels like you're making progress, but not that much, at the end, it just skyrocketed.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the power of compounding. Actually, a big reason for that curve. If you know, those of you watching have heard of the power of compound interest, compound growth. Um, that's what causes just an increasing growth in your wealth as you age and as you accumulate more.
Yeah.
Because the interest you make, you keep getting interest on the interest you've already made, and that's bigger and bigger snowball that keeps growing.
Yeah. So, kind of interest in thinking about like income like that. We actually use a different, a slightly different adjustment of net worth when we're measuring, when we're helping people benchmark their progress. Would you mind sharing with us how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So since really everybody has different standards of living, you know, some people make a lot more money and spend a lot more money than others. A metric that we use, especially for the first half of people's lives, to measure where they're at, is the ratio of your income to your net worth. And so if you can kind of follow that logic, somebody that has a much higher net worth but also has a much higher income may actually have the same ratio of net worth to income as somebody starting out, and who has lower income but also lower net worth. And so it levels the playing field to actually compare how what you're making scales to what your financial wealth is.
Yeah, I think that one of the I think what you said at the beginning too is really true. Everybody's got a different level of expenses that comes with. It's almost like it's almost comes with the level of income that you're at, because I don't remember where I saw this, but basically we rise to the level of our expenses rise to the level of our income almost. And sometimes accidentally they go over even. So hopefully not often though. But yeah, so, and then this ratio, like you said, it's just the income to total net worth really helps us compare where different people are, different jobs, different incomes, but it helps us compare where they are in their life. And I think it's actually broken up into 10 chunks, if I remember right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So here at Plan and Act, we use the financial life cycle, which is divided into 10 stages. I mentioned kind of the first half of that life cycle is where you measure progress by that ratio of income to net worth. And if that ratio is growing, so if your net worth is growing proportionally faster than your income, that means that you're getting further and further ahead. That's a marker of success and moving forward on the life cycle.
Yeah, and then the further and further you go, then that's more of that money can be used to make even more money too, which is
exactly, yeah. Just snowball that keeps growing.
Yeah, and then ultimately, and the goal, I think even the way that we describe it is the final one is more money than you could possibly spend in your life. Eventually getting to that point, which hopefully we all do. That's the goal for us. I just thought of this because as we were talking about comparing ourselves to others, I know a lot of my friends who are like, we end up talking about finance because of what I do, and also I think it's important to kind of talk about these kinds of things more, shed more light into these potentially dark places. And a lot of people I know have a sense of like, I'm really behind. They feel almost a sense of guilt and shame over the entire decade of their 20s. I don't know if you've run into anybody like this, Chris, but it's just this it comes up over and over again of I should have done this, and just instead of having these really happy memories, they feel bad. And then a couple times I've actually done the financial assessment with them, and I was like, look, this is everything you have right now. You're actually really on track with your income versus your net worth. You're actually right on the money, pun intended, right on the money. And so, hopefully you can start to lose the sense of shame and sense of guilt because you're actually doing really well. But it's not until you can have a measure, this financial life, it's not until you can look at the financial life cycle that you can actually know, like, oh yeah, I'm measurably and quantifiably on track. We always say clarity equals power, and I think that the financial life cycle definitely helps deliver that clarity to people, where they otherwise just, the unknown just terrifies people and scares them and makes them feel bad.
Yeah, another thing with the financial life cycle, another thing we say with clients is that it's decisions and not conditions which determine your future, determine your destiny. And we say that because it is possible to be behind. Sometimes decisions, you've made earlier in life, you're behind where you think you should be. But it's not, that's a condition where you are now, and being behind is a condition. And so you have the choice in the moment to make a change. And like Henry said, there's probably so many great memories and things to celebrate from that time period. So celebrate that and then decide if you want something different for your future, then decide to get ahead. And that you can make that decision at any age. And so it's not too late to make a change.
Yeah, I love that too, because that's one of the things that when people ask me what is Plan and Act about, I always say we believe in financial education and financial empowerment. Mm-hmm. Like exactly what you said. It's ultimately we have agency, we have control over our futures, and that's what we help people kind of see that path forward. Bob also, speaking of path, Bob also always talks about the financial life cycle as a map to retirement, because you can't use a map until you find out exactly where you are, and then from there you can start plotting your course. And so that's one of the things that specifically our financial assessment ends up doing for people is this is where you are now. You might be in the woods, but it's only by finding out where you are now that you can plot a course out of those woods. Otherwise, you end up living in the woods forever. And I've seen Survivor Man, and it's not as easy. It's not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, and it's not enough to know where you're going. It's very important to know where you're going or where you want to go. You also have to know where you are. And so that's the more important foundational step that comes before deciding where you're going is realizing where you are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And Henry, going back to your idea of comparison, you don't decide determine where you are by comparing to the people around you, because that's likely to be disempowering and discouraging. If you're going to compare to who you were yesterday or who you were in the past and how you've grown. That's really the only way.
Absolutely. Way. Yeah. I will add on to that something else that I really love that somebody told me recently, because it was about compare yourself to yesterday, your yesterday you, because then you'll see how much progress you've made. Do things today so that tomorrow you can thank you. And I remember I was like, oh, that's such a good visual. That way it's not, because we don't just live in one moment necessarily. There's three: past, present, future. And so how do we, each one of us is helping the other along. So yeah.
I like that image. That's great.
Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah. So this is, do you have anything else you would like to add?
No, I think this is, this has been great. Are any questions coming in?
Let me see. There might be a little bit of noise for a moment while I expand.
Facebook Live.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't look like no questions today.
Coming in?
Yeah, no, it doesn't look like there's any questions coming in, but we do have at least one viewer. So thank you so much for sticking with us. Be sure to check us out. We're going to be doing this every Monday, except for starting in April. We're going to be the second Monday of every month is going to be a group coaching for our clients. So we won't be available to do Money Mondays on the second Monday of each month. But if you're curious about where you are, if you want to start benchmarking your own progress, you don't have to worry about comparing yourself to others. Reach out to us. We'll help you out with that. We have free tools that we can actually offer up to you, so you can know where you are, where you're going, and you can start to see that path forward. We have one more plug for Chris at the end of the month, March 25th at 4 p.m. Mountain Time, 6 p.m. Eastern. Chris is going to be leading us through what factor-based investing is, which is a pretty exciting subject for me because it's a way to finally and quantifiably get better returns than the market. Since we were talking about returns earlier, I think that's pretty appropriate. Sorry, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, could you put the link to where somebody would go if they want to take the free financial assessment and get their place on the life cycle, just to know where they are? Will that link be available?
I'll put it. I'll put it on the in the description. But yeah, so click on the link, go there. You're going to start up a bronze account with us. It's totally free. The bronze account is going to give you access to the free financial assessment, and you'll be able to go take it from there. It's an online app that you'll be able to use. Great. Any final last thoughts, Chris?
No, I mean, great summary there. Stop comparing yourself to others. Compare yourself to who you used to be, and see that growth, and then decide today who you want to be going forward, and do that. Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. Empowering, financial empowerment. I love it. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, everybody watching at home. Hope you guys are having a good week, and take care.
Bye, guys.